Born on September 21st of 1940, Lowell Lee Andrews' hometown newspaper once described him as the nicest boy in Wolcott, Kansas. It's here that young Lowell Andrews grew up, and back in the 50s, Wolcott was still a small, mostly rural portion of Wyandotte County. It was a quiet, quaint, and wholesome little town, where young Lowell's intellect and music talents were allowed to flourish. He was a passionate reader, played bassoon in the college band, and by the late fall of 1958, an 18-year-old Lowell had enrolled at a local college to study biology. But despite outward appearances, Lowell did not enjoy his life in Wolcott and was harboring a frightening, sinister secret. During late November of 1958, Lowell and his older sister had both returned home to spend Thanksgiving weekend with their parents. 20-year-old Jenny was enrolled at the University of Kansas, where she was studying to become a teacher, and on the evening of Friday, November 28th, she lay on the couch watching TV with her parents after a dinner of leftover turkey. Lowell, on the other hand, chose not to join them, and instead sat upstairs in his bedroom reading the final novel of seminal Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky, entitled The Brothers Karamazov. Set in 19th century Russia, The Brothers Karamazov is a passionate philosophical novel that discusses questions of God, free will, and mortality. It has also been described as a theological drama dealing with problems of faith, doubt, and reason in the context of a modernizing Russia, with a plot that revolves around the subject of patricide. After reaching the novel's conclusion, Lowell is believed to have closed it, placed it down on the desk in front of him, and remained in silent thought for a prolonged period of time. Then, after opening a closet in his bedroom, Lowell retrieved a .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle and began walking downstairs. There in the Andrews family's living room, his parents and older sister had their eyes fixed on the TV. They heard Lowell's footsteps in the doorway but didn't turn to look. The Andrews family had turned out their living room lights. When Lowell flicked them on, they vocally protested, but as his mother, father, and sister turned to look at him, looks of terror filled their eyes. Lowell hadn't turned on the lights to ruin their movie experience. He turned them on in order to better aim his rifle. The first of Lowell's bullets punched through the skull of his older sister, killing her instantly. Lowell's parents, on the other hand, died much, much harder. Lowell put 3 quick bullets into his 50-year-old father, William, and then did the same to his 42-year-old mother, Opal Andrews, as she tried to shield her husband's body. Somehow, his mother had survived her injuries, and after staggering to her feet, she lunged at him. In little more than a second, Lowell Andrews put 3 more bullets into the woman that had raised him. She fell to the floor, took her final breaths, and then passed away. Seconds later, Lowell turned, only to see his bleeding father crawling towards the kitchen telephone. He took aim, sending multiple .22 caliber bullets into his father until his ammunition ran dry. He then took out a Ruger .22 caliber pistol from his hip holster and emptied all of its bullets into his father's back. When his pistol quit firing, he ejected the empty clip, loaded a fresh one, then began shooting into his father's lifeless body almost at random. A homicide detective later said that it was as if Lowell had wanted to observe the damage his shots inflicted to different parts of his father's body, a sickening experiment performed on the man who raised him. Then, when all was said and done, he began staging the scene to make it appear as if a household burglary had somehow gone horribly wrong. He opened a window in the family living room, then stacked garden furniture outside it, intent on giving the impression that someone had climbed through the window while the family were dozing. Police were meant to assume that an outnumbered home invader had panicked upon waking the family and in the ensuing chaos had murdered them one by one. Lowell then drove over to his apartment in the nearby town of Lawrence, Kansas, where he began to establish his alibi. Having lent a friend his precious typewriter, he arranged to pick it up that evening under the pretense that he had to write an essay. Then, after dropping the typewriter off at his apartment, Lowell visited a local movie theater where he attended a showing of the 1958 movie Mardi Gras. He spoke loudly, imparted friendly greetings to other theatergoers, and placed himself in the very rear of the theater so that everyone filing out at its conclusion would see him seated quite prominently at the back of a well-lit theater. Once the movie was over, Lowell decided to drive to the banks of the Kansas River, where he dismantled the weapons used to murder his family and tossed the separate parts off the Massachusetts Street Bridge. He then returned to his apartment, telephoned local law enforcement, and informed them that he strongly suspected his parents' house had just been burgled. However, when the police arrived at his apartment and were forced to pass on the bad news of his family's murder, they observed that Lowell expressed only the slightest amount of surprise. Yet not only did Lowell seem unperturbed at what would normally be considered devastating news, there was barely a hint of emotion about him. When asked how he knew of the potential break-in at his parents' home, Lowell began obfuscating. Then once he admitted his 911 call was prompted by what he called a bad feeling, he was promptly arrested as the case's primary suspect. Whilst in police custody, Lowell vehemently protested his innocence. He claimed that he had a falling out with his parents prior to Thanksgiving and hadn't been over to their place in weeks. But the fact that Lowell seemed to have had a mysterious premonition regarding the incident which led to his parents' and sister's deaths was extremely incriminating. Homicide detectives pressed him for hours, demanding to know why and how Lowell had killed his family. It took the intervention of the family's minister, a pastor Vertio C. Dameron, to finally coerce a confession from who he'd once considered a promising young man. Dameron reportedly gave the boy a Coke before asking him, "You didn't do this terrible thing, did you? If you did, now's the time to purge your soul." Lowell might have finally admitted to the murder of his mother, father, and sister, but the confession was completely devoid of remorse. Lowell told police officers, "I'm not sorry, but I'm not glad I did it either. I just don't know why I did it. I didn't even feel anything as they died." On the advice of his defense team, Lowell pled not guilty to reason of insanity and was subsequently sent for tests at the Menninger Clinic in Topeka, Kansas. It was here that Dr. Joseph Saturn established that Andrews was almost certainly schizophrenic, but that he had been completely compos mentis, or of composed mind, at the time that he murdered his family. Dr. Saturn went on to call Andrews' crime a sudden murder, meaning his behavior had been perfectly regular both before and after his family's slaughter. This led the doctor to believe the state was well within its right to prosecute Lowell to the full extent of the law, and which they promptly did. After taking the stand, Lowell's pleas of insanity fell on deaf ears, and following his conviction, he was condemned to be executed. After his request for clemency was denied by the state's governor, Lowell was asked about his family's funeral arrangements. "I don't care what you do with them," he said. Then, when asked if he had any regrets regarding the murders, he stated, "I didn't feel anything about it. The time came and I was doing what I had to do. That's all there was to it." After further appeals for clemency were disregarded by the U.S. Supreme Court, Lowell Lee Andrews was executed by hanging on November 30th of 1962, aged just 22, and he gave no last words. Those in attendance gave eerie accounts of Lowell's final moments, with one reporter stating he was, and I quote, "outwardly remorseless and disinterested." Another reporter, this one from the Associated Press, said Lowell was actually smiling slightly as he was led to the gallows. Because Lowell was a hefty 6'1" and 250 pounds, it's believed that he had to hang for some time before he was pronounced dead. Other witnesses claimed the rope actually broke, but despite their proliferation, such rumors were never confirmed. Lowell Andrews was one of the last people to be executed in the state of Kansas. He was subsequently buried next to his parents and sister in the Mount Salem Cemetery in Excello, Missouri. The 3 family members were labeled on a single tombstone. Lowell's separate tombstone lies parallel and is engraved with a single word: son. Prior to his execution, Lowell was detained at the Lansing Correctional Facility, the very same place as the murders of the Clutter family were being held, Richard Hickok and Perry Smith. Hickok and Smith had been made infamous following the release of Truman Capote's book In Cold Blood, with the former being asked what he thought of Lowell Andrews following numerous daily interactions with him. He was a funny kid, Hickok said. He had no respect for human life, not even his own.
Hey friends, thanks so much for watching. Just a quick heads up, I release new videos every second Tuesday at 7 p.m. EST. Also check out my main channel, Let's Read, where you can hear longer compilations of interesting, scary stories just like these. And if you prefer audio only, feel free to check out the Let's Read podcast, located anywhere you listen to podcasts, all linked in the description below. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you in the next one.